Hi everybody, it's crazy, it's Monday, and it's time for the UPBGE video of the week. Before I get started, gotta give it a shout out to my trusted because you guys rock, to my crazy fam, I love you guys. Now, last week I didn't do a video because my computer went down and all kinds of heck broke loose, and so I was talking to the guys in the Discord channel about doing a live. We're gonna do that a little bit later because I still haven't got my computer back up to par. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. See, there we go. We left off last week with physics steps, and that is right here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue reading on from there. The max physics steps control how many consecutive physical simulation frames the game engine is allowed to run for each rendered frame. A high value 5 is more physically accurate because it gives the physics engine enough time to complete the physics calculation regardless of the game frame rate, therefore yielding a more consistent game time that is independent of the frame rate, at the cost of taking up more processing time. A low value 1 can increase the frame rate of the game slightly by reducing the number of consecutive physical simulation frames the game engine is allowed to run every frame, but at the cost of inaccurate physics behavior because the game time will be linked to the frame rate. And that's kind of bad if your monitor is only set to 1. Okay? Bottom line, if you are still confused, just set the max physics steps to 5. This ensures that the game time is as constant as possible no matter what the frame rate is. Okay? Logic steps, that's these little guys right here. Very similar to the max physics steps, the max logic steps control how many consecutive game logic ticks the game engine is allowed to run for each rendered frame. When the game frame rate is lower than the normal FPS setting, a high value 5 is more accurate because it makes sure the logic step always gets enough time to finish all the logic computation. Conversely, a low value 1 will yield slightly better performance at the cost of a fluctuation in game time. So this means that when the frame rate is high, the game will run normally, but if the frame rate drops, the game will appear to slow down. Okay? So for most part, just keep them at 5 if if you're not really worried about high performance, or if you don't care about high performance. Bottom line, the default value of 5 means that the logic always gets enough time to run, no matter what frame rate the game runs at. This ensures that the game time does not slow down when the frame rate is low. Okay? FPS. Now, it's different than FPS, okay? Your frame rate is what your monitor shows, okay? FPS, frames per second, is the holy grail of performance benchmarking. For a video game, a high frame rate is always desired because it means smoother action and faster response to user input. Okay? Frame rate is a function of the complexity of the scene and the speed of the computer. Unfortunately, the setting here only acts as a frame rate cap. Okay? So that's this right here. It's just giving a frame rate cap of 60. Okay? Default value is 60 frames per second. Means that each second the game engine evaluates the game logic 60 times. So 1 second, 60 times. Okay? This particular number is chosen since most LCD monitors do not refresh faster than 60 Hz. So any extra frame rendered by the computer will just be wasted. Okay? So when you go higher in frame rate, you see a little bit better, but you've got to have a better monitor for it. Okay? Internally, FPS sets the number of logic ticks and physics ticks the game engine runs at. So as you lower the FPS setting, the number of logic and physics ticks performed by the game will decrease accordingly. This has the effect of slowing down the game time. In other words, if the FPS is set too low, not only will the game feel choppy, but it will actually appear as if it's running in slow motion. Okay, bottom line. The default value of 60 is good for most game applications. Setting this value higher does not give you better performance. It is also customary for some games to set the FPS to a lower value, such as 30. The idea is that a game running at a constant 30 FPS feels smoother than a game that is fluctuating between 30 frames and 60 frames. Additionally, you can set VSync in your graphics card to force a frame rate ceiling. You do not have control over that in the player's computer, though. Okay, because is different. Okay, so all right. Physics deviation. Where's that at? Right here. Okay. The values linear threshold, angular threshold, and time all control how aggressively the physics engine puts objects to sleep in order to reduce the load on the game. So this right here's your threshold times, and you got a linear and angular. Okay. And then you got your time. Setting a deactivation. See that. Setting the deactivation time, okay, to 0 effectively disables this option. Since sleep can also be disabled per object from the physics property editor, it's generally not recommended to disable deactivation here. Okay, I don't think they have it in here because I think they took it out. Okay, but you can set these to 0 and it will deactivate. Okay, and it also has it in the physics tab, but I'm not sure about that. Okay, lower the linear threshold of an object becomes lower the linear threshold supposed to be of an object comes to a stop earlier than expected. Okay, so if you lower your linear, it comes to a stop earlier. Okay, your angular threshold, if an object comes to a stop from spinning earlier than expected. Okay, so an object will stop spinning earlier than what you were expecting it. So if you have a top and you got it spinning and you lower the angular threshold, it will slow down and stop before it should have. Okay, physics panel settings. Okay, so where's that at? So now that you're okay, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. I'm actually going to go ahead and stop there because now we're going to get over in here, and I want to save that for next week because this is a very important one, and I want to get deeply into it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. That's page 20, okay, and then it's called physics panel settings. That's what we'll leave it on for next week. Let me kick out of these guys. There we go. Okay, page 20. Physics panel settings is what we're going to do next week, and play around with it, have fun, tinker around with some of these and see what these do. And if you got like a little setup going, you can tinker with these and you can see what it actually does. Okay, so till next week.